Okay, and we're live. Good evening, everybody. This is Alexis Francisco. I'm here representing In Culture Company. I welcome all of you to this live conversation tonight. We have a really special guest with us tonight to talk to us a little bit about spirituality on the island. I'm going to introduce him in just a second so we can get started. But for those who don't know In Culture Company, if this is your first time with us, just very briefly, In Culture Company, we are committed to sowing seeds of peace, conflict resolution, solidarity, healing, and liberation for the island of Aitiki-Skeya. And we do that through community workshops and discussions, educational resources, and live discussions like these. So tonight, we're going to be talking specifically about the spirituality and religion on the island with two really special guests. We have two practitioner scholars with us that are going to share with us a little bit about Haitian Vodou and La 21 Divisiones. I'm going to turn it over to them to introduce themselves, and then we can get started tonight. Anybody who's willing to go first can go ahead and start us off.
Oh, that was the signal. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Kira Malika Daniels. I'm an assistant professor of art history and African diaspora studies at Boston College with a courtesy appointment in theology. And I'm also a practitioner of Haitian Vodou and someone who's based here in the Boston area of Massachusetts, part of the community of Société Nago.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bembecito. A lot of the people know me as a musician of the tradition of the Lucumi, Santeria, Afro-Cuban. But I am also a musician and untogi of the Haitian and Dominican Voodoo traditions. I am a papaboko of the 21 divisions. And I am also a babalosha in the Lucumi tradition.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for being here. My name is Alexis. I'm one of the facilitators for In Culture Company. And like I already mentioned, tonight's conversation is actually part one of a two-parter. So stay tuned for the announcement for the date for part two. But part one of our conversation on the religious dimensions of our culture and lineage on both sides of the island of Aitiki-Skeya. And we're going to be looking at the Voodoo tradition in Haiti and La 21 Divisiones in what's now the Dominican Republic. But first, I'm going to turn it over to Kira to sort of start us off with an intro to sort of the spiritual landscape on the continent before we get to the island.
Wonderful. Well, first I wanted to say thank you all so much for joining us for this live conversation, and so grateful to be a part of this conversation with In Culture Company and with Bembecito. I think that one of the things that's really important to understand about African religions is their diversity. I think it's very easy to recognize that, Africa is often labeled as, a country itself instead of a continent of 55 different nations with remarkably different varied traditions of cultures, languages, and legacies and traditions. But that said, I think that there are also a lot of ways that African indigenous traditions really share some common ground with regards to the structure of the religious traditions. One of the ways that you see this commonality is the understanding that there is often a supreme God. There is a highest God. At times, this God is considered to be a creator. At times, this is the role of someone else. But I think a lot of people who think about African religions as being pagan think of them as being pagan because there is no belief in a supreme God. And in fact, many African indigenous religions, particularly of West and Central Africa, do have this highest God. Then you have another layer of spirits who serve as intermediary roles. They may be spirits of trees, they may be spirits of fire, they may be spirits of metals, they may be spirits of fortune, love, abundance. And these spirits are the ones to whom people pray and make themselves devoted to. These are the intermediary energies, if you will, that allow you to communicate most directly and very efficiently with the Supreme God, but they also take care of sort of everyday matters. And then you have the ancestors. And I think that this is something that you might consider to be the most accessible point of entry, if you will, for so many of us who know very little about Africana religions. Everybody has ancestors, you know, whether you believe in gods or spirits, everybody has ancestors. And it's understood that while many ancestors in African religions are not necessarily regarded as being gods per se, they are a part of the sort of cosmic fabric. They are considered to play such an important role in guiding your own path, in being able to help remove obstacles from your path, being able to help guide you, offer you counsel, advice about how to move forward. And then I would include the natural environment as this entity that we must respect and we must regard with such appreciation for the life that it gives us, for the way that nature sustains us. I think that it's really important to think about the fact that so many indigenous religions, sometimes called earth-based traditions of Asia, of Latin America, of the African continent, can be considered, you know, environmentalist to pre-environmentalist, green before it was cool to be green, in the sense that if you are honoring the river, if you are honoring Oshun, who is the spirit of, you know, love and also warriors and the river, then you know that you need to keep the rivers clean. If you are going into the forest to collect medicines for healing, then it's important to know that you need to keep planting trees, and you need to cut down only as many as will allow the forest to continue sustaining itself, right? And so I think that there's a deep appreciation and a reverence for the natural environment. And that doesn't mean that a rock is a god or that a tree is a god, but it does mean that everything in the natural world is an entity to be respected, to be appreciated, and to be valued for the work that it does. And to know that you are new on this earth. We humans are new on this earth. You have to respect the animal kingdom. You have to respect the natural, vegetal, mineral elements of the world. I would say that there are a number of different elements and activities of African religions that are mirrored in world's traditions all over the globe. Things like an attention to healing. So many people have a deep knowledge of pharmacology. They study the plants, they study the roots to think about how these can be used in medicinal baths, how these can be used to, you know, create salves for people, how they can be prayed over to provide blessings for people. Initiation rites play an extremely important role. And it's understood that there are many initiations that people undergo throughout their life. Being born is, in fact, an initiation into the world. It's an initiation into what it means to be human, right? And then there's the initiation of puberty. Something that I think is really profound is a lot of healers and, you know, traditional priests and priestesses of Africana religions will say that the reason the world is in such chaos today is because we're not respecting the natural world. That's why we're having so many natural disasters. And because we don't allow people to have those formal, recognized roles of initiation where they're, you know, recognized by the community, they're being welcomed by the community, they go through a hard, challenging experience with others, they build a sense of brotherhood and sisterhood with others whom they initiate with, and then move on into next stages of their lives. We can think about marriage as initiation, becoming a parent as initiation, and finally even death as a form of initiation into ancestorhood. I think that there's a lot that can be said about the populations of Africans that were brought over as enslaved peoples during the transatlantic slave trade to the Americas. But very broadly speaking, I think we can think about enslaved Africans coming from three very major civilizations, particularly for the island of Hispaniola. So the three sort of kingdoms that were considered to be especially important with Africans coming over to Hispaniola were the Dahomey Kingdom citizens who were from current-day Benin and certain parts of Nigeria. People coming from the Yoruba kingdoms of southwestern Nigeria, people coming from the Congo and Ndongo kingdoms of Democratic Republic of Congo, Republic of Congo, and Angola in Central Africa. So I'll stop there, but I think that this is a really helpful entry point for us because it reminds us that these traditions of the diaspora have really deep roots and share a great deal of similarities with these African indigenous religions that continue to evolve, you know, that don't stay static in, 1500, but have continued to change and evolve even up until today. Oh, I think we might have lost Alexis. Oh no, that's terrible. Well, I think what was next was giving us an opportunity to talk about Vodou in Haiti and Vodou in the Dominican Republic. So maybe Bembecito, you want to take on that next stage?
All right. Well, I'll touch a little bit. I think we're getting him back. There we go.
Oh, right on.
Awesome. I mean, y'all didn't miss a beat. That's perfect. So yeah, I am gonna thank you so much for that, Kira, for laying the sort of the foundation of understanding the sort of shared roots of the different traditions that emerge, that then go on to emerge after the transatlantic slave trade begins to people begin to get taken from the continent over to these different places that they are taken in Latin America. So I do want to turn it over to you, Bembecito, to begin to set the stage for us on what happens on the island of Haiti. And also invite folks that are watching on the live right now, as you're hearing what you're hearing, if you have any questions, go ahead and begin to drop that in the comments, interact with us, and we'll engage those questions too as we go along. Bembecito, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, well, I mean, according to history, everybody knows that Point Zero was what is now Dominican Republic. So we have to always look at that. People get caught up in this whole, Dominican issue and kind of forget that Black history in America or African history in America did start in what is today Dominican Republic. So, those are things that we have to consider. So obviously, African spirituality at the point of transatlantic slave trade starts obviously in the Dominican, what is the Dominican Republic today. So the first, according to what I've researched, the first spirituality variations that appear are obviously things called cofradías. Cofradías are fraternities, and they are established by the church in the Dominican, in Santo Domingo. These cofradías actually come from Spain. And from what I've researched, even in Spain, before getting to the New World, these cofradías were made up of many African people, mainly men. Of course, they started with the Europeans and Spaniards. Then they turn over into what is African slaves in Europe, mainly Spain. That transfers over to Santo Domingo. The first cofradía recognized in the New World is La Cofradía del Espíritu Santo, the Cofradía of the Holy Spirit, established in the city of Cotuí, which was the first place that received lots of or a big shipment, let's say, of African slaves for mining gold, because gold was the first thing that was going on before sugar and all that. So this is where this cofradía starts, and many other cofradías come up, and these cofradías are set up, like I said, by the Catholic Church to kind of, you can say, control the slaves a little bit and have them gather and be overseen and whatnot. Then you have cofradías that come up by nations. So some cofradías are made up from the Congos, some are by Minas, et cetera, just like you have in Cuba, the Cabildo systems. And these cofradías, these cofradías usually have a patron. The biggest, most popular patron was the Holy Spirit. And there's a connection to the Congo already, because the Congo, according again to history and a lot of people that I've spoken to, was heavily Christianized, and they were already kind of doing a little bit of syncretism with their stuff. So a lot of these Congos that came to the New World already kind of had a concept of what was going on, and they were able to merge the Holy Spirit, which was a big entity or divinity for the Congo people all around the Americas, and especially in Hispaniola, the Holy Spirit was a big thing. Then you have other cofradías like dedicated to San Juan Bautista, St. John the Baptist, which is huge. And there's many more, but the biggest one that was spread out through Santo Domingo colony was the Holy Spirit. That was the biggest one, and it served as a network. And they even had a Mani Congo. in the island, which was the king of the tribes, let's say, of the Manieles, which were the maroon people, and they established a lot of settlements. So each settlement had a mani, but there was one mani Congo for the whole island at certain points, and the cofradías are still in place today. The first one is still there, and then there's another one that's very popular, La Cofradía de lo Congo de Villamella, which is recognized by UNESCO, and that's kind of like how what we know today as African spirituality in the Caribbean started. Later on, obviously, these were people of different ethnic groups and different traditions, like you already mentioned, and they started mingling and melding, and it happened all over the Americas. Obviously, then you have the colony of Saint-Domingue, and they start to import many more slaves because they have obviously shifted over to sugar plantation, which was huge. Santo Domingo is kind of like in the background. They abandoned Santo Domingo and it's not producing anything. So Santo Domingo becomes like a backyard of nothing. And Santo Domingo is where all the slaves are coming in. And this is where what we call voodoo now starts brewing. And all these traditions start brewing, and fast forward, we get what we have today. And there's just many lineages and traditions all over the place. So you would have to travel all over the island to see everything. But from what I've studied and what I've been told through a lot of elders, the voodoo as we know, cha-cha Vodou, they call it, or laku Vodou, or basically what is Nara Sogwe, was the first traditions of Vodou on the whole island. Later on in the 1800s, Asogwe comes in to the Department of the South. And that is one of the royal lineages that was implemented into the island. But there's, like I said, there's many types of voodoo on the island. And the 21, we call it in the Dominican Republic popularly 21 divisions. But in Haiti, that name is also used, and people think it's only, that's only Dominican. No, in Haiti, it's also used 21 Nación, or 21 Division. It's or it could be 101. The mystical numbers vary, but it's a name that is all throughout the island. Obviously, voodoo in the Haitian side stuck. On the Dominican side, voodoo was taboo when Trujillo comes in. So obviously, 21 Divisions becomes the go-to name because anything that has to do with voodoo is outlawed. So people couldn't say it, but it was voodoo because it was even documented. It was documented as a dance that people were doing, or ceremony. And Trujillo didn't want to have it. So that's a little bit of how this came to be. I mean, it's a lot in between, but obviously I can't take up all the time. So.
Yeah. No, thank you for that, Bembecito. I'm going to come back to you on this question of the 21 divisions in a second, but I want to invite Kira to share. I mean, you already kind of began, Bembecito, to talk about how the traditions kind of came up on the island, but I wonder if you could share a little bit about how would you define Haitian Vodou and its origins specifically on the island, if you want to add anything to what Bembecito already laid out for us.
Absolutely. I first want to say that I'm so grateful, Bembecito, that you began this historical narrative talking about Santo Domingo with emphasizing the importance of Congo peoples coming over, already having blended this tradition of Catholicism and African indigenous religions, because that's a huge part of the story that usually gets left out. And it's a really important part of the equation. I think, it's really important to know that Islam and Christianity have long lineages on the African continent. You're talking about basically Egypt and current day Ethiopia becoming Christian before Europeans become Christian in the 1st century, whereas you have to wait till Constantinople comes in Europe, 3rd century, right? So a very long history, but that second wave of Christianity comes to the Central African Kingdom of Congo. And you have for 300 years, 400 years, this blending of African indigenous religions, Congo indigenous religion with Catholicism. And I think that means that in some ways, Vodou starts on the continent, right? In the sense that you have this mixing of Catholic saints, of African spirits, of ancestors, of God, Jesus as the eldest ancestor, Mary as the central matronly figure, right? I think that's a really important part of the story. And we can't leave out our Muslim brothers and sisters either. That's also a really important part of the component in Vodou of Haiti, because several of the most important figures in the Haitian Revolution were said to have been Muslim, including Buman, who was an enslaved person who came over from Jamaica to the islands of Hispaniola, to specifically Saint Domingue at the time, and was considered to be nicknamed Bookman because he was a man of the book. He was a man of the Quran. It's also said that Cecil Fatiman, which is a Muslim name, was Muslim. And so you have, at the time of the revolution, a majority Congo nation, actually, about 60 to 70% of enslaved Africans brought over to Haiti at the time that the revolution was going to break out in the 1770s and the 1780s, and the revolution broke out for the first time in 1791. You had this incredibly powerful contingency of different nations, to use the term, of different ethnic groups coming together, banding together, including free people of color as well as enslaved Africans, who said, we speak different languages, we come from different nations, we come from different regions, but we're all fighting for freedom. We're all fighting for our liberation. And this is so interesting because, Bembecito, I'm appreciative of this term, confradios. I wasn't familiar with it, but it does sound so similar to the cabildos in Cuba, in Candomblé, in Brazil. You have something similar. In Haiti, very interestingly, those sort of distinctions all became gathered under the umbrella of Vodou, known as 21 Nations, known as 21 nations, all considered to be under the umbrella of Haitian Vodou. And so you have the Congo nation, you have the Peto nation, you have the Gada nation being connected with Dahomey, Congo nation, of course, being connected with Congo. You also have the Senegal nation, the Juba nation, right? But all of these are considered to be belonging to the tradition of Vodou. And I think you bring up such a good point in highlighting this distinctions and regional varieties, because Vodou in the south of Haiti is very different than Vodou in the north of Haiti, where you have, 3 different sort of areas in the city near Gonaïve called La Koussoukri, La Koussouvenance, La Koubajo, which are entire temples that are more devoted to the Yoruba tradition, or one temple that's entirely devoted to the Congo and one devoted to the Dahomean traditions of Benin. So that's what you have in the north. That seems to resemble a little bit more Santo Domingo's Vodou. But in the south of Haiti, you really have all of these different nations underneath the umbrella of Vodou. And I would say that, moving forward, you had this really interesting time between 1804 and 1860. When Haiti finally gains its independence from France in 1804, the French are kicked out. They got to go. All the Catholic priests flee. And Haiti is placed under an embargo. So very interestingly, for 55 years, the only Catholic priests that exist on the island are Black. And of course, because the majority of people in 1791 were from the continent, not born in Haiti, but from the continent, they were African Catholics who perhaps already had experience blending these traditions, perhaps were coming to it in this newer generation. And so I think you have this period of time in the 1804 to 1860 where Vodou is really becoming deeply entrenched in all over the islands, but also Catholicism is being blended with it. And then I would say moving forward, Haiti finally has these sort of iron gates lifted by the international community in 1860. And you have, French Catholic priests who are sent back to Haiti and things like that. You have various periods of Vodou being persecuted, not only by the Haitian government at times, but especially by outsiders. Numerous interventions by the United States, by France, and then moving forward into the 20th century, I think that what you have today is a sort of coexistence that has been uneasy between Vodou and Catholicism, but largely there's been a sort of a mutual understanding. Listen, if you don't tell us you go into the Vodou temple, you come to mass in the morning, we'll be okay. But it's the emergence of the radical evangelical Protestants in the 1970s and 1980s that have proven to really rock the foundation of this uneasy coexistence, burning temples, destroying temples, blaming the Haitian earthquake on Haitian Vodou instead of, Haiti's on a fault line, you know what I'm saying? And so these are the types of issues that we're dealing with today, is thinking about negotiating these different communities of Protestant Haitians, Haitian Vodouisans, and Catholic Haitians. And many would say to be a good Vodouisan, you have to be Catholic. So that's even more complicated.
Wow. Yeah. Well, thank you both. Thank you both for making so crystal clear that we actually can't understand the presence of these traditions on the island separate from the historical and political development of the island as a whole and the two nations that share it. I'm seeing some questions in the comments, and definitely from the questions that we've gotten ahead of this talk, folks just actually want to understand, get a little bit of an introduction into like, what are these traditions? And so I'm wondering if maybe you can, and I know that you could probably spend the whole hour and many more of these conversations doing this, but maybe Bembecito, if we can start with you, like for someone that's just coming into this conversation, and we had many Dominican folks messaging us saying that they had never heard of the 21 divisions, that they didn't know that we had a tradition like this on our side of the island. Give us an introduction of like how would you explain or lay out the basic sort of understanding of the tradition on the Dominican side?
So, I mean, a lot of people obviously don't know because it's a taboo, as it is in Haiti, but even more so, I think, in the Dominican Republic, in post-Trujillo times, and for people that may grow up not in a rural area, it might be something alien, so it depends on where you come from. But the 21 division is really the same thing as what people say Haitian Voodoo. I mean, people say Dominican Voodoo, Haitian Voodoo, it's all the same thing. The 21 divisions is just like Kira explained, the 21 nations concept. All these ethnic groups coming together spiritually, but under an umbrella, and it's by divisions. So each division is basically a group of spirits, maybe grouped up, for a certain aspect, or by nations, like you explained, the Dahomey, the Nago, the Juba, the Congo, the Petro, etc. So the 21 divisions is really the same thing. We might have variation in the spirits names, but of course, it's the same thing in the end. Basically, it's a mix of traditions, but like I said, it's just not like throw everything in a pot. Each nation or each division is saluted in a ceremony by an order. And like Kira explained, there's areas or temples that might worship one nation or one style, like in the case of Gonaïve, where they have Souvenan, Sucre, etc. And maybe, there's parts of Haiti and DR that do that more so, but more so all over the DR, it's the umbrella concept of all these nations grouped up together. I mean, it exists. There's a lot of people that practice it. A lot of people inherit it by lineage of blood, let's say, or tradition of family. But there's also initiation, which people sometimes say, no, there's no initiation to voodoo, be it in Haiti or in the Dominican Republic. I've heard it on both sides. No, you don't get initiated. There's a variation of lineages that that maybe you don't get initiated. Then there's some that you do. But the ones that where you do get initiated, you get the grade of or a title, let's say, to direct ceremony, to officiate ceremony, etc. But you know, it's the same thing, the same concept as the Haitian Voodoo. Again, a little bit of variation on certain spirits. Voodoo on the island has always had a back and forth. So from the Haitian side to the Dominican side to the Haitian side, because if you go to the borders of Haiti and DR, all the papabocos or ungan or brujos, they're gonna worship or serve Belie Belcan from DR, Papacandelo, Anaïs Sapie. You're gonna see altars with all these more so Dominican lua, but so it's something that's been brewing for centuries or whatever, and it's been a back and forth of mixture. So in the Dominican Republic now we have Asogwe temples. So Asogwe is making a big entrance into the Dominican Republic. Wow. But of course the traditional 21 division style holds more reign, and but you're gonna find a lot of influence in the Dominican Republic. Obviously, there's a lot of Haitian people that are moving or have been living in the Dominican Republic, so all that influence comes in. So you're gonna have Lua that are more so Dominican, and of course the rest of the pantheon from Haiti, or what people consider to be Haitian. So I think that in a way, the Dominican side has a little bit more variation than Haiti, but due to the whole Haitian influx, you know what I mean? Where I mean, Haiti is still super diverse, because, like you said, if you go to the north, and even if you go more north to Cap Haitien, that's another whole world of voodoo. So it's like everywhere you go, there's a different type of lineage or voodoo that's going to be shocking to the eye if you travel the island.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that, Bembecito? This is so helpful for me. I feel like I'm learning so much. Can you talk about the different roles and the different titles that one can acquire, either in the 21 divisions lineage or in the Asogwe lineage? Because I'm really curious. I remember when you first introduced yourself and said that you were Papa Boko. That's a word that we have in Haiti and in Vodou, but it has a bit of a different meaning on our side. So I'd love to hear about the titles, and then of course I'm happy to share my my understanding in Haitian Vodou.
Boko is a term that has a lot of things, because obviously the books have termed Boko to be the maleficent priest or whatever, and that's not it. I mean, it's partially, but again, it's regional. Everywhere you go in Haiti, Boko has a different term. Boko is just a priest. Obviously, it comes from Africa. It's the Ifa priest of the Vodou tradition of the Dahomey Kingdom in that area. So the Babalao is more for the Nigerian or Nago term, the Yoruba term, where Boko no is the Afa priest. That obviously came to our island, to Quisqueya, and it of course we lost the Ifa oracle, but the principle of the priest was still there. So the Boko is the high grade priest in the 21 divisions. When we say baptized, or our initiation is a baptem or bautizo. So when you're baptized, you're just a servant still. So you have to work your way up through a 7-year apprenticeship and pass tests to become a Boko. Then when or a Mambo also, that's the female term, obviously, just like in Haiti. When you pass all these tests, then if you initiate people, then you're a Mama or Papa Boko, because you have initiated others. So that's the highest grade. Anybody can be a servant, and just like in Haiti and the Dominican Republic, no initiation needed. There's people that are horses of the Loa or brujos. That's a term popular in the Dominican Republic. Oh, this guy's a brujo. Let's go to the brujo, whatever, to get a consultation. And a lot of the most successful brujos have no initiation in the Dominican Republic. But the papaboko is or the mamamambo is the highest grade in most of the Dominican systems, and also in some of the Haitian lineages, boko is used instead of ungan. They use boko and mambo. Also, the term gangan is another one. So I'm a papaboko gangan. And but also the boko, again, going back to regional differences, is the priest of Makkah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And actually, I'm also initiated into that. I'm not supposed to talk much about it, but so it applies to both terms. So it's regional even in Haiti, but a lot of people, the books have made the boko seem like the boko is an uninitiated person that just does malevolent magic. So and of course you're a mamboasogwe, so you can go ahead on that one.
Yeah, no, thank you, Bembecito. Kira, would you share about what the titles are in your tradition?
Sure. So I'll state very briefly in terms of kind of a 1 minute 101 of what is Haitian Vodou. We have, very much like these African religions, a highest God, a creator God. His name is Bon Dieu, which literally means good God. He's kind of considered the architect of the universe. And I just slipped and said he, but actually in a lot of African languages, like Congo, like Yoruba, like Dominican, you don't have a gender necessarily associated with God. God is considered to be neutral. So Bon Dieu for us is our highest God. Then we have our Loa. The Loa are the intermediary spirits whom you would pray to. So you have Agwe, master of the seas, captain of the seas. You have the fierce woman warrior, who's the patroness of lesbians and of queer people, and also considered to be the archetypal mother, dark-skinned mother. So you have all these different intermediary spirits. Then you have the Zancets, who are the ancestors. And then you have humans, of course, who play an important role in all of this, cosmic pantheon. And then with regards to the titles, I would say that you have probably 4 different ways of identifying different ranks within the tradition. So you can start with a laver tête, which is literally a washing of the head, and it's our sort of baptême. It's our sort of baptism of a very, very early entry. You can serve the spirits without ever being initiated, just as Bembecito said in Haiti. You have no obligation to be initiated. But if you would like to sort of dip your toe in, if you will, you can receive a laver tête, and that positions a particular spirit who has claimed you and kind of seats them in your head, if you will, crowns them in your head so that they can deliver messages to you more clearly, so that you have this kind of spiritual eye that's been awakened, so you can receive messages in dreams more clearly. So your met-tête might be identified for you during your laver tête. If you decide to go on, and some people skip laver tête entirely and go straight to kanzo. Kanzo is, in some ways, a translation would be a trial by fire. It is the couché experience, being initiated for 7 to 9 days, depending on the house, depending on the region. This is more typical of what I'm talking about in the South. And you would be initiated as an unsi when you come out, and that's a fond word from Dahomey, from Benin. You would be an unsi, somebody who serves the spirits. Literally, the term that a lot of Haitians use is, today people will say I'm a Vaudouisan, but historically people would use the term savite. I am one who serves the spirits, just as Bembecito was saying, the servant of the spirits. So that's the first level. You've passed a trial by fire. You've committed yourself formally. Your met-tête has been revealed to you. The master of your head, the spirit who walks with you most closely, has been revealed to you. Then after that, you can experience being initiated at the priest or priestess level. So you can become a soupouin, a mambo soupouin, meaning a priestess, literally like on the point. It doesn't translate very easily. Or an unga, which is a priest. And that means that you are trained in the language of the ritual rattle, arasson, which is considered to be the implement of the gods, a way of calling them in and also being able to send them away when it's time to close that portal. But you do not own your rason when you are supoint. When you are that first level of priest or priestess, you are considered to be somebody who can conduct ceremonies, but it's at the highest level, which is asogwe, which Bembecito mentioned, that you are considered to be a high priest or priestess. I am a mambo asogwe, a high priestess of the tradition, and a baby, because I've initiated more recently, and you're always continuing the journey of learning, you know. But the high priest or priestess is able, they own their aso. They own their ritual rattle, which means that in theory, they could start their own temple. They could start their own for their own peristil. They could initiate others. And, you know, after initiation, you go through a period of 40 days where you have certain prohibitions that keep you stronger, because it's considered that you come out of the womb when you come out of that inner temple. When you come out of the Jevo, it's considered that you are a baby starting life anew. And so you have to sort of reset the clock, and you have to begin the world gingerly, stepping carefully, you know, paying extra attention to people's energetic fields and things like that as you begin to learn and sort of commit yourself to serving the spirits.
Thank you, Kira. A question that I'm seeing in the text box right now, I mean, there are many questions if you want to take a look through, but one of them is a question regarding the Lua. We've heard a little bit about the difference in the terminology or the names that they might receive on both sides of the island, but the question is, do they have similar characteristics? And specifically when they are mounting, when folks are relating with the spirits in that way, do they show up similarly on both sides of the island?
Okay, so I guess I'll answer a little bit of that. In Dominican Republic, for most of the area, the Lua are going to be consistent in the way they mount. Obviously, each Lua mounts differently. Some are violent, some are more easy, depending on the nature of the Lua. Again, we call them misterios, Lua, whatever. So it depends on the horse, really. Also, there can be different horses or people that mount one certain Lua, and they might mount that Lua differently. But overall, it's the same pattern. It should be consistent with the colors they use, the offerings they take, the foods, maybe a way they talk or act, again, depending on the nature. In Haiti, there are differences regionally to mounting Lua. If you go to an Asogwe ritual, they're gonna mount one way, but if you go to places like Souvenance or Gonaive, they're gonna mount totally different.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be kind of alien if you're from the capital of Haiti and follow Asogwe traditions, or any tradition there, even family style, and go to Gonaive or the north and see the way they mount there, you're gonna be like, wait a minute, this is totally different. If you go more so north, again, a little bit different. So it's in Haiti, it becomes a little bit regional with the mounting. I think in Dominican Republic, it's a little bit more uniform overall. But again, it depends on the horse, on the person that mounts. Some people are going to mount totally violent, and the reason that they might mount violent is because they're not initiated, and they should be initiated.
Yeah.
And this goes for like the whole island because it's a concept that is very alive there. I mean, people that mount should be the ones that are really initiated into something. And touching on what you said, Kira, in the Dominican Republic traditions, we also have the part where you guys say la vetet, but we say refresco de cabeza. So that's kind of like a same thing. There's also a thing called aplazamiento, which is like an appeasement, which is more for people that are not ready for the full initiation, or also for people that get like I was saying, those violent possessions. and that's a way to appease the Loa and kind of leave them alone. And then, of course, the baptism, which is the top, And I think in the north of Haiti, that's basically the same format they use, also for the most part. You want to touch a little bit on the mounting?
Yes, sure. This is, I think I really agree with you that the regional variety shows so much about the diversity with regards to Vodou on the Haiti side. One thing that I wanted to go back to, you mentioned Ganga, and that's so interesting because way in the southwest of Haiti, there are people who use the term Ganga, and just as you were mentioning Boko, in Haiti, unfortunately, it's in many ways it's had a negative connotation, just as you said, with people saying, oh, it's a malefactor, it's somebody who's trying to cause harm to others. But in other parts of Haiti, Boko just means you're a priest, you're initiated, or you're not formally initiated. You may come from a lineage that doesn't require like initiating because you have inherited the spirits through your family. That's more typical in the rural areas. It's more typical in the urban areas that you have an asogwe line where you formally initiate. But the Ganga quite likely comes from the Kikongo term Nganga, which means priest in Central Africa, specifically in regions that speak Kikongo. I think regarding mounting, this is very interesting. I would say that typically you do see a lot of similarities with regards to how certain spirits will come. So a spirit like Simbi, when you mentioned Makaya, for us we have a Simbi Makaya who is again a Congo spirit, a spirit of cool rivers, of waters, of rain, of magic, and of healing. Simbi can come, and often because she, gender fluid, Simbi is associated with water. Often they'll want to, douse themselves in water or drink water or kind of bathe in a pool of water. And that's something that we'll see very consistently. But one thing that I'll note that's very interesting about mounting is it also depends on, I'll say two things. It depends on region. It depends on the road or the manifestation of that particular spirit. So for instance, my house is based in Jacmel in the south. It's a seaside city. So you can imagine that Agwe, captain of the seas, and La Sirène, the queen of mermaids, is are two spirits who play a very important role. They might not come to ceremony quite as often in the mountainside village of Nyobale, where I also do work, because it's landlocked, right? But there you might have more attention to spirits like Simbi, the river, because the rivers are coursing through the mountains, right? So you might have spirits playing more of a role in certain areas, being more prominent, or if, as Membesito noted, you have a particular lineage in the family, like if your family honored Ogu, if your family honored Dato, if your family honored Freda, and you have that legacy, that lineage, Agaou, you may have families that pass that down to the next several generations. And so somebody is much more likely to have Agaou be one of their closest spirits, maybe even their metet, if their family served that spirit. And then the last thing I'll say is, each spirit for us, each loi for us in Vodou in Haiti has many different roads. There's Ogu Jewuj, there's Ogu Badagri, there's Ogu Panama, there's Ogu Saint-Jacques, there's Ogu... There's so many, right? Same thing with the Elzulis, same thing with the Dambalas. And so with this in mind, Ogu Badagri comes differently than Ogu Saint-Jacques or Ogu Ferrai. Ogu Badagri, Ogu is the spirit for us of iron, of war, of a sort of commanding general, but also a soldier on the front battle lines. And so you have Ogu Saint-Jacques, who comes a little bit more like the diplomat, a little bit more like the general, who comes fierce, but as somebody who carries a certain degree of presence that indicates that maybe they're not the one on the very first line of the battlefield, whereas Ogu Badagri, for instance, may come weeping. Ogu Badagri may come weeping from the spoils of war, from the pain that they experience, from being disappointed. Also, Ogu is the spirit of justice. They may be disappointed with humans that have sort of erred, that have, crossed lines that they shouldn't have crossed. And so they weep, with a certain sadness. And so even the same spirit with different manifestations can come in ceremony, can mount a particular person differently. And as Membesito said, people who come quite violently, or spirits who come quite violently to certain people, it may be because they need to be initiated. It could be because they need to do some spiritual work. And the spirit is indicating you have work to do. We have unfinished business. Maybe you all haven't been taking care of your ancestors the way you're supposed to, taking care of the spirits the way you're supposed to, and we need to address that.
Thank you both for that. Thank you both. I see. So, speaking of ancestors, there's a couple of questions that have come into the comments about the role of ancestors in both of these traditions. Wondering if you can speak a little bit to that.
Okay, well, ancestors are super important in Voodoo. People tend to leave them out and focus on the Lua so much, and forget about this. But ancestors are the main connection because, like I said, and we keep saying, this is a tradition that for us from the island, or people of African descent, we inherit this. Yeah. So it comes in our blood. So obviously we have to look back on the ancestors. The ancestors, I'll touch on my side and let Kira touch on the Asogwe part of the ancestral worship or ceremonies. In the Dominican Republic, there's rituals that are done mostly in rural communities. In the city, these things have been lost. It's kind of like part of the Voodoo tradition, but a little bit apart. So there's ceremonies called bancos or levantamuerto, which are celebrated maybe yearly. When a person dies, there's a cabo de año, which is a year, finishing the year ritual. And there's a lot of things that go on. There's music and prayer, a whole bunch of things depending on the region. Then there's a 5, I think it's a 3, 5, or 7 year ceremony again. And then this can continue every year depending on the wishes of the ancestor that died or the family tradition. In my family tradition, we do a yearly banco for all the ancestors. And obviously, if they were initiated into the tradition, then you have to do these things because, again, everything is based on the ancestors, and without them, we don't have anything. So every time we open up ceremonies, or there's a certain time of the year, we have to feed them. And there's big ceremonies done both in the Dominican Republic and Haiti. This can be a family tradition, and a feeding is done every year for the ancestors. So, we have to feed them and do ceremonies to them so they can be calm and leave us alone. So the concept that we have in comparison to other tradition is that we have them there and we appease them, but we don't rely on them much because we rely on the Loa. But they do come in dreams, but we don't have them as the Loa. There's a saying that an ancestor of mine used to say that was passed down, and it was los muertos se dejan quietos y los Loa son para trabajar. The dead, you leave them alone, but you obviously appease them, and the Loa are to work. I'll pass it over to you, Kira.
You can't just drop that mic.
Los muertos se dejan quietos y los Loa para trabajar. Okay, all right.
That's fascinating. Well, I'll say that it sounds like we have a tradition that's very similar to what you've described, Bembecito. We call it retire mona glo, literally to recall, to bring back the dead from underneath the water. For us, it's understood that Afrique Guinée is either an underwater realm or a realm beneath the sea where the ancestors and the spirits reside, as well as those not yet born. So we believe also in reincarnation. It's fascinating because it's not simply a South Asian tradition in Hinduism and Buddhism, but it's also something that we have in African religions and African-derived traditions of the diaspora. So Afrique Guinée is considered to be at once a sort of mythic spiritual realm and also a kind of mythic Africa. It's understood that, comme si namwe pral sotsi ou bien pral tourner Guinea. My spirit is going to return to Guinea, which at once means Africa, where the ancestors all reside, but it also means Afrigine, this underwater realm where the spirits reside. So when you call back the spirits with Retire Monadlo, it's a tradition that typically is supposed to be done a year and a day after somebody has died. And you bring them back, and they may be cold because they're coming from underneath the water. And so you need to feed them. You need to care for them. You need to tell them, I'm going to place you here on the altar so that you're close, so that I can always reach you, so that whenever you need me, I'm here to be able to feed you, to be able to serve you, to care for you. And that spirit, that ancestral force should be, shared with the next generation. And then we have the Giddy Spirits. I saw that there was a question about the Giddys, and of course, how an appropriate way to, start wrapping up. The Giddy family, the Giddy Nation for us are the spirits of the dead. And they come from the Gidevi nation of ancient Dahomey kingdom. They were the indigenous people of a particular area in Abomey, Benin, who were made to be ritual grave diggers who cared for the dead there. And so we think this is how Gede came to Haiti. Gede has a sort of king and a queen, if you will. Baron Samedi is considered to be the king of the Gedes, and his wife is Mama Brigitte, associated with Saint Bridget, the Irish Catholic saint, actually. And, it's often, something that people are afraid of. Oh, death. Oh, da-da-da-da. But in fact, they're spirits of life, death, and sexuality. Because it's important to understand that if we, are explaining that we believe in reincarnation, then these things are linked. And remember, all the way at the beginning of our conversation, we talked about initiation happens at multiple stages in our lives. And even death in a lot of our Africana traditions can be seen as an initiation into ancestorhood. And so these Gede spirits are playful. They can be lewd. They make jokes, and they make you uncomfortable, and they may come kiss you, and they dance banda, and they play with these ideas and experiences of the erotic as being connected to life and death. And this is a ceremony that we, take very, very seriously, usually in the beginning of November. It coincides with the Catholic Day of the Saints, Dia de los Muertos in Mexico, is a sort of parallel tradition of honoring the ancestors. Gede for us, Fet Gede for us, is an opportunity to honor the nation of the Gede spirits, and also to honor our ancestors, to ask for their blessings, to recall their names, to think about their importance in our everyday lives. Because as Bembecito said, they're the reason why we're here. So to forget them is to lose everything that we have. To forget where we come from is to forget everything that we have.
Ashe.
And I will.
To this question, I want to kind of begin to come into the last couple of questions for this. This again, like I said, part one of our conversation here. But one of the other questions that came up was one that folks were asking: what elements of the Voodoo tradition have become a part of the culture on general society that we may not even recognize as such? If there's anything like that you can speak to, either one of you, that would be.
In the Dominican Republic, a lot of things that people might not realize. Everything we do is basically voodoo, and people don't even realize it. The music, the food, just everything. I think everything, but a big thing that I will say is huge on both sides of the island, and it's coming up right now, is Gaga. Okay, and that's become a staple in the Dominican Republic. Obviously, it comes from Haiti, but it's become Dominican as well, and it's celebrated now on Holy Week on both sides, and it's something that I think it's super huge, and it is voodoo.
That's beautiful. I would say that for thinking about the importance of popular culture and the way that Voodoo influences popular culture, I really agree. I think it's such a pervasive part of people's everyday lives in ways that they don't even know. So for instance, you know how grandmother like abuela or like grand-père speaks to you in like parables and riddles, and it's like the literal translation would be like, well, the duck gotta learn to fly before it can swim with the feathers and the da-da-da-da, and you're like, what? This is in Haiti what we call langage. And it literally translates to language, but It means proverbs, riddles, wisdom wrapped up in folds and creases of something that you kind of have to tease apart. And in part that comes with like deep knowledge. But a lot of that langage comes from Vodou. A lot of those sort of riddles and parables and ways of speaking kind of tongue in cheek, saying something without making somebody realize what you're saying. A lot of that comes from having a coded ritual language of the gods, of the spirits. So that's one thing. Carnival. Everybody knows Caribbean Carnival, right? That's huge. As Bembecito said, the music is enormous. In Haiti, of course, we have compas, but we also have gaga music, which for us is enormous all Carnival season, basically from Christmas onwards until Easter. It's just gaga that you hear on the radio. And, you know, Carnival, it comes from European Catholic parade traditions. It also comes from African masquerade traditions. The idea to put on a mask is not just, oh, I'm not myself. In the West African masquerade tradition, it is I am a spirit. It is I am able to channel spirits, right? And so you have representations of figures, sometimes as very clear as Catholic saints, but sometimes spirits that sort of play in between those different identities. So you have carnival traditions. What else? The food. Certain foods are associated with the spirits themselves, like chaka, which I love, which is so delicious. It's like kind of like our sancocho a little bit. It's a little bit different, but there is this ritual tradition of feeding people this soup on Fetzaka, who is the spirit of agriculture and the harvest and farming and commerce and money. And you honor him by feeding him chaka, which is considered to be a food of the peasants, you know, considered to be a food of the rural poor, but it's wildly popular. Everybody loves it because it's delicious. And it's definitely considered to be a food that you use to honor the spirits in part, you know. So I would say that there's a number of different ways that the popular culture has been influenced by Vodou. And the last thing I'll say about that is I study healing traditions because I think that it's such a wonderful way to gain access to what people really feel at the end of the day. Because you might say you're Catholic, you might say you're Seventh-day Adventist, you might say you're Protestant, Evangile, you know, evangelist, and then when you get sick, when your mama gets sick, becomes ill, all of a sudden you go knock on the mambo's door, you go knock on the ungan's door, because you know at the end of the day, if this Western medicine isn't working, then you need to find a solution and you'll do whatever it takes. And so I think that actually healing is a huge way that you see people still saying, well, I don't believe in the spirits, I don't believe in law, I don't do that stuff. But when it comes down to it, if their baby is sick, if their mother is ill, if they themselves are ill, that's an avenue that people will often explore and pursue.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
Wow. Well, I'm going to ask this last question as we begin to wrap up. So a lot of questions came into us and have continued from folks who feel like they've been cut off from these traditions. Younger folks who are saying, like, how can we find our way back to them if we haven't been taught this or we got cut off from our traditions at some point. And so I want to make room for each of you to speak to either young Haitians and young Dominicans that are asking this question. What would you say to them?
It's important to find a person.
Yeah.
If you're in Dominican Republic or Haiti, I think you should find a priest or a person that is well known in a certain community that is considered legit, because obviously there's a lot of charlatan everywhere. And this is not only for Voodoo, it's in every tradition and everywhere in the world. So you have to find somebody it has good, good recommendations, that's legit, be it here or on the island. And you start by maybe getting a reading if you're not from the culture itself. For somebody that's not from the culture, I would say get a reading with that person. If you feel that person is very good and legit in every way, then you follow up with them. But yeah, for the people that are not of the culture, the reading is the initial point, especially like here in the United States. That's how I basically start with everybody that comes looking for this tradition, is doing a reading. And then from there we take it, because it's different when you grow up in it, that you're surrounded and immersed by it. and here, you have to start somewhere. Yeah.
Kira, sorry not to interrupt you, but I'm getting a lot of comments that folks can't see or hear you. Can you just take a quick look at your audio and see if it's working? Because I really want folks to be able to get this information that you're. Oh, it seems like you might be back now. Can folks comment if you can see and hear Kira now?
I can't see her now.
Kira, are you still with us? Bembecito, are you with us?
Yes.
Okay. Can folks hear Bembecito on the live? Yes. Okay, I think we might have to try to bring Kira back on in a minute. And if we can't get her back, because we are starting to wrap up, we will make sure to share the resources that she was just sharing with us on the comment thread once we wrap up. Bembecito, is there anything else that you want to add as far as this particular piece?
Well, I think that that for anybody that's in search or has some type of calling, I know everybody. I mean, there's a lot of people now interested in getting back to their roots. Like I was saying, you have to do some research. Don't just go to anybody. Don't just show up to a botanica. I know a lot of people go to botanicas as a place, of seeking or whatever. But I think that a botanica might be a source to ask for a person. But I think now in the age of social media, it's easier to find priests. Again, you have to study the person and make sure they are legit, because there's a billion people out there saying they're priests of this or that and the other, and they're really not. They're just out to make a buck. So be diligent in researching the person, and before you make any move with that person. But the readings, I think, is a good initial point with a priest that is recognized by the community. And there's a lot of material out there, like Hiro was saying. Do research online, but don't take everything you see online literal also, because there's a lot of misinformation on the internet. So it's you have to investigate everything you see. don't take everything online literal either. So it's a tricky situation, but it's a little bit easier now with social media. Obviously, you can find anything or anybody, and I think if you feel a calling, make the move, because that's the ancestors letting you know that you have to go back to these traditions. Don't be afraid of them. They've been demonized, but obviously now we know that that's not the case, and everybody's realizing it, and people are waking up to the reality of what our culture is, especially in the Dominican Republic, that we're having a lot of good movements for these traditions. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to see that going on in the Dominican Republic.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you, Bembecito. That's like the perfect way to close this live conversation right now. Thinking about all the different ways that these traditions have been demonized and hidden, and this is part of our